Good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting of the Development Committee of September 7th to order. Would you please call the roll?
Member Krajewski,
Here.
Member Covert, here. Member Garcia, here. Member Ozark, here. Member Rutledge, here. Chair Tornatori.
Here. And we have a quorum. Chairman's remarks. I'd just like to thank Vice Chairman Garcia for taking over for me 2 weeks ago. Thank you very much, Paul. Do we have any public comment?
No.
Nothing in public comment. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 17, 2021.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Moving on to regulatory, I will entertain a motion to approve DCR 416-21, a resolution with amendments to the Building and Zoning Department schedule of fees, and it'll be a request to waive the first reading.
Second.
Motion and second. Jim, you want to fill us in on this?
Sure, thank you for entertaining this for us. So what we're looking at right now, this is not a comprehensive review of the fee schedule where we're looking to raise fees. This is in conjunction with our Acela software program update that we're doing. We've been working on that since June of last year. It's scheduled to roll out towards the end of this year, possibly early spring next year. So some of this is to help work with the automation. Just a couple quick examples of that is if you noticed in the application fee section, we've got two sections under the type 1 accessory permits. And basically those are based on square footage. In the automation, it has a hard time telling what the square footage is. And if you add more than one accessory project in, it automatically takes you over into higher application fee. There's a non-refundable application fee. So rather than have somebody pay $145, you have to refund because they've overpaid. We're just going to get rid of one of those entirely so that your application fee is just going to always be $50. So it's that type of automation stuff that we're looking for. We've added a few text changes in there that just say this is how the permit fee is calculated. The cost of it is based on. That appears in a number of new spots. We added a new bond. We charge bonds for all of our permits. Realize we've never charged a bond for new house permits. So we're adding that in there as well. It's a $2,000 bond. It's the same as the drainage bond. We really want to keep people on track, moving their permits forward. One thing that will help is the automation also is 180 days before permits expire. Right now it's 90. So we'll have to be changing the building code to pick up a few of those changes as well. That'll probably be coming in the next month or so. We did add a new category for operations permits. And these are really our tent permits and things like that. So there's a 1, 2, and 3. 1 is really residential. We don't get a lot of residential permits. The second category is more what you would see at like a country club where they want to put up a big banquet tent that's going to be there for a number of days, may have a portable restroom, may have some other equipment with it. And then the third is where you have big events, multiple tents, like a PGA tournament. Historically, we've never really had a way to capture the cost of the work that we do for those because we make dozens and dozens of trips to some place like Medina. You'll have starting weeks in advance of an event like the Ryder Cup or the BMW. One inspector out there a couple of days a week, then it's going to be 3 times a week, then it's 4 times a week, then it's 2 inspectors. So we're hoping to better capture some of that. And then there's a new series of zoning issues, services that we've been performing for years but have not been charging for. In the new software, every time somebody makes a request for one of these items, it automatically says there's a cost for it. To take that out was a very difficult, kind of out of the scope of the project process for us. So we were like, well, we do pre-application meetings, we do zoning verification letters, we do the form for car dealerships that the state of Illinois requires, the agricultural use letters, and the group home certification letters. So we should be compensating ourselves for these. So we're adding a fee in for those. That's really most of the big highlights of what we're doing. We thought that perhaps maybe towards the end of next year, we may do an RFP to really get a closer look at where we stand with the surrounding communities as far as what our fees are in relation to everybody else. We've always kind of felt we were in the middle, the 75% range, but we haven't actually raised our fees overall since 2008. So it's been quite a while, and it's worth paying somebody to probably come in and take a look at. But that'll be something that we won't even consider till we get the Sasella thing up and running before we take on
One problem at a time.
another giant
One
project.
issue at a time.
Yeah, so that would probably be something we'd want to bring back to you later next year. Yes, ma'am.
Any question?
I'm looking at page 2 of 9 under building permit fees. And I'm looking at section C, industrial and commercial. And I see, costs calculated for churches, business, educational. Can you explain that a little? Because I see,
Sure.
is this what these institutions have to pay when they get the building permit fee?
It is.
Okay.
So what we do is we take the square footage of the project. So if you had a brand new building that was a church or a business or an educational use, it's based at $80, $85, $75 per square foot. And we use that number, and then your permit fee is actually based at $30 per thousand.
Okay,
So we use that $80 per square foot to figure out the overall cost and then a fee based on that.
how do you determine the different fees? Because I see, tax exempt like churches, it's at $85, which is the second highest, after the handicapped institutional, that's $100 per square foot. How are these being calculated? Because I see different numbers. They see factory and industrial's low, but others are higher. Is there like some sort of reduction for tax exempt institutions?
We charge permits for everybody. We don't do tax exempt, no permit fees or anything like that.
Right, but what are
That's
the numbers
interesting.
based on?
So the numbers are based on the IVC and the amount of review for things like this. So for example, a factory, it's generally, just an open space, right? Until you start adding some equipment, and there might not even be very much equipment, but a place of assembly or a church, you're figuring out an occupant load for every single area. You have a sanctuary, you may have an educational section, you may have a kitchen. The review cost and the time that it takes to do that, and then it also brings the cost of the permit up as well. So it's really based on kind of everything that you've got to do with it. And quite frankly, I can't remember the last time we had institutional use. We don't get a lot of, these are for commercial permits. We don't get a lot of large commercial stuff. If somebody really has a large, like a hospital or something like that, it's going to get annexed. So we don't really see that much of it. Our commercial stuff is way down compared to where it has been in the past.
So your price per square foot is estimated based on the time that it spends to review the plans?
It
Per
is,
square foot, okay.
Yeah, those,
Any-
Be easier just to do it based on time then, because every situation is unique. So one church is gonna be different than another with regards to what they have in it. They may not have the school, they may not have the sanctuary, they may just have an empty
we
thing with
base our,
chairs.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. We base we have our consultant, Safe Built, and we base their time on that, but we also we use this as the actual permit fee itself, because we have to base it on something, so it's based on square footage. The review process is based on time.
Anyone else? Okay. No further questions. We have a motion and a second. No further comments or questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any old business? Any new business? Mr. Pachuski.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for Sarah being here too. Board Member Hart, Renahan, and myself got several emails in the last 2 weeks from a resident out in the Timber Lakes area. But they're trying to get a permit. They were sent it to stormwater, but they're trying to get a permit to redo their roof. Their roof needs repairs. But evidently because they're in a floodplain, and we have it turns out it's a zoning code now that restricts any work done on residences that have done more than 50%, I think is what it is. They're prohibited from doing it. I know Jim's working with them to try to get a workaround, but in discussions with Sarah, we put this in a couple of years ago, 4 years ago. It's much more restrictive than any municipality around us. Municipalities tend to have more restrictive codes than unincorporated areas. But in my opinion, a lot of these older houses in these stormwater areas are not going to be able, once they've reached this 50% threshold, if I'm understanding it right, it's not going to be able to do any work on their house or get a permit.
50% threshold of what?
Yeah, that's.
I lost you.
Substantial improvement.
Substantial improvement, 50% substantial improvement, which these people have had their house for 34 years and they need to re-roof their house, but they have already hit the 50%, so they can't get a permit to put a new roof on their house. Alternative is going to be, it kind of falls apart. We just had a brief conversation, Jim and I, but I guess it's to encourage people to leave the flood zones. But I don't know what that's going to do to their houses. But if, and I know Sarah can maybe speak to it a little bit, but a lot of the municipalities don't have this kind of restriction. And his suggestion to at least Hart, Renahan, and myself was maybe we look at like a 5 to 10 year time frame or something. I don't know, but it seems to me that I don't know how many houses we have that are in floodplains in DuPage, but a lot of them are a bit older. That if they can't fix their house,
Crazy.
that doesn't seem practical. It sounds like we're more severe than anybody around us. So I'd like us to maybe take a look at this. I know we're going to get, I think we got maybe a workaround for these people that we're going to send to them, but I don't know if you could maybe.
Sure, and Jim, is it okay if I, okay, thank you.
Okay, let me stay a second.
Sure.
Just so I understand this, you're saying that our code states that in certain floodplain areas, if a property owner's got substantial damage, which is 50% or greater than the value of the house, they can't get a permit to fix their house.
If they've already done substantial improvements over the many years, they added a deck, they added whatever, if they've hit 50%, they can't get a permit to do anything else.
And that's
Yeah, but they can
50%
to raise their house.
50% of their value, the assessed
50%
valuation.
of what?
I think of their original,
It is 50% of the current assessed evaluation. So I believe that's one of the things, suggestions that Jim is going to make, is that the home get reevaluated as a possibility, because obviously values are higher now than they were last time it was evaluated. And so the re-roof may fit under this with this specific case. The whole criteria of the substantial improvement and what the county has set through the building and zoning code has helped the county-wide properties in the floodplain get up to a 20% discount of their flood insurance. Flood insurance is skyrocketed with everything happening from Sandy to every other hurricane in the world. So flood insurance in the United States is skyrocketed. And so this is helping offset some of those flood insurance costs by being conservative floodplain managers. This specific situation, or the county's code, if I recall correctly, goes to the life of the structure. That was based off the state model floodplain ordinance of the life of the structure. The municipal engineering group, as set by the county, has been, this has kind of spurred it, doing a survey of all of the communities within the county to find out what their timeline criteria is for substantial improvement. Some communities are 5 years, some communities are 15 years. I think
Lyles is 10.
Lyles is 10. Addison is like 1962. It's something crazy. Like each community is different for substantial improvement, but for unincorporated DuPage, it is for the life of the structure. And so that is what we're looking at, is all the cumulative improvements for the life of the structure. And by taking this criteria forward, it has helped with the CRS designation that the county was able to get. And so that's kind of the background to it. This specific situation, it is unfortunate that we're at a re-roof situation that has caused this to push it past the substantial improvement threshold, but I believe there's been up to $150,000 worth of improvements preceding this that have helped us get to that threshold. So obviously we've done a lot there's been a lot of improvements on this house. Jim has been working hard with his staff to come up with a possibility of what can be done to get this person through this. But it is a situation going forward. We do have a lot of properties in unincorporated DuPage in the floodplain that do have to compile with this rule. And so I would say that this is worth a further discussion of, and we can work with building and zoning on, once we get the survey from all the communities of what each community in DuPage County is doing, if they want to amend their building code, or if they want anything from us as justification for their building code, we will certainly work with them. But that's kind of how substantial improvement works in this specific situation. It's just unfortunate how we got to there, that we're at a re-roof instead of like
Because in
a
some of
patio.
these areas, they're larger parcels and they may have started 40 years ago with a small house and now they've added a, addition or whatever, but now we get to a point where they've already hit 50%. In fact, I think these particular people said they were issued already 2 permits.
Correct.
Little things they did, even though they're already over 50, they didn't even know they're over 50, but they've already had 2 other ones they've done because they went back over the history of it. But
Correct, in this situation. And it is something that, again, every time we have a structure in the floodplain and it floods, that gets equalized over all of the structures in the floodplain through DuPage County. And so some of those costs, the whole purpose of the National Flood Insurance Program is to now kind of make sure those costs are equalized. And so allowing someone to continue to build and improve a structure in the floodplain where then they could get flood insurance payouts is affecting a structure.
I don't understand how a
Small.
roof
Yeah.
changes anything.
Yeah, that's where I'm
It's the
at.
value of the home.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying a roof, we were just fixing a roof, that doesn't add anything to anything.
Floodplain, right.
But
It's the value of the structure. And so that's the whole
that's why
criteria.
I think we
and-
need to look at, because that stuff like that shouldn't even be counted in the consideration, in my opinion, but that's me. but-
And we're also, in addition with working with the communities, we are working with both the state floodplain coordinator and the state hazard mitigation officer on guidance of how to process through this, especially in this situation where it is a simple re-roof, not an addition.
Right, I mean, addition is one thing, because it'll add to maybe more stormwater to that area, as you said, but we're fixing it.
Member Ozark.
Is there any provision for waivers that you know of, or?
I have never seen, that would be a variance. Is that how it would be, Jim? I don't know.
I don't think we've seen any provisions for that type of stuff. The only exceptions they had were like safety items. If there was a violation and something absolutely had to be repaired, you're allowed to repair it.
Well, wouldn't a roof fall under that?
That's a very gray area.
Okay.
If you just were to re-roof, probably not. If you had a hole in your roof and you received a violation notice to say you have to fix this, then probably. I don't want to say for sure because we'd have to go out and evaluate the roof. I have not personally gone down to see what the roof looks like.
Okay.
I'm told that the roof just needs to have work done to it. I've also been told that there's damage to it. So I'm not sure
What the
exactly. Their contractor says it's damaged. They initially approached us and said they just want to re-roof. So there's a bit of a gray area that we need to.
So the issue
work
is
with.
a tear off versus that.
It is. And the other thing too is it's it's my understanding, they could do an overlay, which
Okay.
doesn't require a permit.
Okay.
Which wouldn't involve us at all.
Wait.
And that's one option that's been presented to them and they don't want to do that. It's also presented to them that they, in this particular case, maybe have talked with the assessor, get your house reappraised. See if your assessment value goes up and maybe that opens up room underneath the 50%. And I don't think they wanted to do that either. So,
Well, it's gonna take a while if you got your roofer already, so.
so if your roof's not leaking, maybe there's time to do a few things, but we'll see. We have to talk with them. So we have a meeting scheduled this morning. Sarah's gonna be part of it, and we're gonna make sure we have an approach to present to them and possibly meet with them later this week.
But I would like us to at least address like the timeframe, because we're definitely surveying other communities. It seems like they're got less of a timeframe, and then maybe what counts. Yeah, I don't see anything with a roof, anything sort of floodplain.
Right.
Or somehow determining what improvements don't count against the 50%.
Right, yeah.
Maybe
Change
such
that.
as
So
a roof or something.
If I could, yeah, what I was addressing, those are the guidelines that we've received from FEMA. It's not county guidelines. This is, and the problem we're very cognizant of is we don't want to make an exception or create a situation where to help this guy out because it may seem unreasonable with his re-roof, we compromise our CRS rating. We lose a point in that. It's a 5% increase in everybody else who pays for flood insurance. Every point we are below 10, we're 6 right now, is a 5% savings for every county household that has flood insurance. So it is specifically about his situation, but there's a bigger picture we have to be very careful of. If he makes an improvement to this house, while it may just be a re-roof, he sells it tomorrow, the next purchaser has a mortgage and they're gonna get flood insurance. Well, now they've got a house that has a higher value. If it gets damaged, it's a higher payout for FEMA. And we also have to make sure we don't affect our CRS rating in a way that they don't want to make payouts because we're not following their rules. So their guidelines that they set up, but they're pretty strict on their guidelines. So
But the
we have to be
long-term
very
effect
careful.
is, we're basically gonna, these properties over time are gonna be not be able to do anything to them, and they're gonna just basically dilapidate till they're gone. And that's, I mean, that's where they're moving, and that's why I think some places have, municipalities have 10-year timeframe like Lyle, and, or 5-year timeframes versus the
Do we
length
know
of
what
the.
do we know what the timeline of the other permits that they've
They were,
received on this?
they all predated our CRS application. They were done a number of years ago. So yeah, there was.
So if we were to change to 10 years, that would be, they would probably be able to do this with no issue or something like that.
I believe the $100,000 renovation they did would be beyond 10 years. So it would-
I
it would
definitely
take
agree
about-
with Member Krajewski. I think it deserves definitely a discussion. I don't know if it's gonna help this person at this point in time. I
No, I
definitely
think they
think the
gotta work around
reassessment
for
at this
him, but I
point.
think it's just, this is, I just see it as many other issues coming up. I don't know how many unincorporated houses we have, but a lot of them are older and they may be at that point, so they can't fix their house or do anything to their house, and therefore eventually it's just becomes knocked down and it's just an empty piece of land in a floodplain.
And there are a number of properties that have been purchased as a result of money that we've received. The Valley View subdivision around Route 53 is a very good example. Sarah, what have you taken down? Probably 25 houses in there in Valley View?
So in total, we've purchased, well, in Valley View, we have about 45 lots, but in total, we purchased over 100 flood prone properties between Valley View and Lyle and other places in the county.
So, and that's the ultimate goal, I guess, is really.
The ultimate goal is not to have any houses in the floodplain.
Floodplain.
So return it back to floodplain, right?
And has these floodplains grown over time?
That's the question.
Well, yes, we are facing larger floodplains. We are getting storms differently than what we had in the early 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, water's all flowing differently, so somebody could have owned a house for 50 years and not been in the floodplain, made improvements now, they've
Correct.
expanded the map, now they're in the floodplain,
Correct, yes, places are flooding that did not flood previously.
and
We are
therefore they
seeing-
would come under this same rule, and but they didn't know it when they made their improvements.
Well, I think your example there is one which I would hope that there would be some type of administrative workaround. And if somebody did buy a house and put a lot of money into it before it became a floodplain, and now it is, I think that's a little bit of a different situation. And I don't know if we have any of those, but
Well, Sarah's just saying, we did this, the map's grown, so we have to have.
well,
And I don't know, Jim, maybe that's something we can look into of how, when the improvements were made, and I do actually think it was in the mapped floodplain when the initial improvements were made down in that area.
That's this one, but I'm just saying that map has grown
And we
tremendously.
can look into that and maybe consult with FEMA on that for properties that weren't in the floodplain when improvements were made.
Right.
And then if we're required to track those, I think that's all part of the whole tracking
yeah,
system.
that seems fair. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does this apply? I had a constituent a couple years ago, when there's a partial, when part of the property is in a floodplain, say the back portion of a lot, does that apply toward the house? Is that a situation? I believe
Only
that-
when the portion of the structure is in the, it's the
Structure has to
insurable
be-
structure. So a
Okay.
shed, no, insurable structure, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think that forgetting this particular person because this individual apparently is being worked with, perhaps we can take a look at this. And it's not just us, we have to look at it in conjunction with FEMA and CRS, the whole insurance issue, because again, we don't want to penalize thousands or hundreds of people on the basis of one, but we also want to be fair in how we assess it, so. Okay, we'll take a look at it. Thanks for, you people in District 3, it's just rabble rousers, you know.
That Timberlakes area, oh, it's like a village, I'm telling you, Timberlakes is, as they say, it's the most vocal in the county.
Luckily.
But
And they'll
thanks
be
for
more
bringing-
vocal when they get
bringing
decommissioning
it.
water, isn't it? Timberlakes that were,
Well, they're getting, yeah, a few areas, right?
yeah.
Any other old business?
soccer field going in.
Any new business? Hearing none, without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.